The biggest law firms in the world make over $8 billion in annual revenue, and every year thousands of students compete for a really small number of places. At the same time, salaries for qualified lawyers in the UK have surpassed £180,000. And yet most people have no idea what commercial lawyers actually do. Honestly, every year I speak to hundreds of students in that situation. That makes it really hard if you want to become a lawyer one day, because your success in getting the job depends on how well you can actually explain it. So in this video, I'll give you a simple three-part framework: the clients, the firms, and the people, so you understand what commercial lawyers actually do. The first thing I like to explain is that commercial lawyers advise businesses and very wealthy people. Really, that's what separates a commercial lawyer from other types of lawyer, like a family lawyer or a criminal lawyer. And lawyers wouldn't exist if the businesses didn't need them. So we can break this down into a few categories. One is what we call corporates. These are just like private and public companies across a range of industries. Then you have financial institutions. So that's like banks and funds. Just think of this as like big financial institutions that hold a lot of other people's money and they have cash to invest in places. Then you have sovereign and state-backed entities. I know that one's a bit tricky. It's kind of like the funds of governments or companies that are backed by governments. And then lastly, you have individuals. So these are like usually very high net worth individuals. They have a lot of money and they need help managing that money, often to minimize how much tax they have to pay. So all of these businesses and these wealthy people, they want to make more money, right? Like speaking honestly, that is how the financial markets work. And so you can break that down into a few things they want to do. They want to transact. So that's maybe buy a company, raise some money. They need to manage their business, so operations. There's disputes. So maybe they sue someone sues them. And then maybe they need to restructure if things go wrong or there's some governance issues. A great example recently is OpenAI. So they've had to transact. They've bought companies, they've had to buy data centers, they've had Microsoft's investment. Then operations, which is, you probably heard Sam Altman's firing, there's lots of employment law issues, regulatory issues. Then there's disputes, think of the litigation from the New York Times, as well as Elon Musk. And then restructuring. They've had this big conversion from a non-profit to a for-profit company. Step two, the legal solution. So businesses have these needs, they want to make money, there's ways of doing that. Why can't they just do it themselves? Well, some of these needs literally requires lawyers. So I can't transfer ownership of a company or list on a stock exchange without certain types of documentation. And I need lawyers, people who understand the laws and the rules to actually carry out these needs. Second, and this is really important, is enforceability. So if I want to transact in a market, say I want to do a deal with you, your word is not enough. I need a contract. I need something that a lawyer drafts that captures all the needs that I have. Third, I need someone who is trained in risk. I need someone trained in the law to capture what's important to me, to protect me from risk, and put protections in the documents in case things go wrong. Fourth, and this is the most important commercial point, it's the creation of value. So it's a bit like hiring accountants. If you have good accountants, they save you money by paying less tax than the cost of hiring these accountants. The same applies to lawyers. It's not just about this point about protecting against the downside or the risk. It's having this really skilled team who can make a deal more tax efficient or negotiate better terms, or you pay less for a deal than you would otherwise. So lawyers help their clients not just with legal issues, but business problems. They're trained to look at these business problems you have, use their knowledge of the law, and then apply it in that way. So we talked about why businesses need lawyers. And some of this work gets done in-house through what we call the in-house legal team. All that means is I have a business. I'm going to have employees in the business who are lawyers, and they help with some of the legal stuff. But sometimes if a business is doing a really big project, it's really complex, maybe it's across 18 different countries, maybe I just really need a lot of special help, it makes sense to have what we call external legal counsel. That's when we hire a separate law firm. Think of this as hiring a team of special agents who come in for a particular project. So as a business, I'm hiring an external law firm and I'm paying for capacity, right? So my in-house legal team is not enough. A big deal might need 50 lawyers working around the clock for 3 months. You also might need specialization. So someone who is a specialist in this really niche bit of German property law, for example. Next is independence. So sometimes the parties I'm dealing with, say like a bank, might need an independent legal opinion. Really, the point here is it's hard for them to trust that my employee, who is an in-house lawyer, can give that opinion. And so it comes from an external law firm. Then there's multi-jurisdictional. So this is why many law firms are very international. Say a deal spans 18 countries. Maybe I need help from lawyers who understand the laws in the countries they're in. The last is market knowledge, which is just imagine like if there's a law firm that does this area of work day in and day out, they know about the area of work really well. So if I'm buying a company, they know what terms of market, what's negotiable, and what to look out for. So we've said that businesses have needs. They go to lawyers. They can do that in-house or with an external law firm. Let's talk about how those law firms are structured. So law firms have departments. And if we go back to that visual before, you can map it to the departments of a law firm. So transact, you have banking, M&A, capital markets. Operate, you have intellectual property or employment law or some kind of regulatory seat. Then disputes, that could be broken down into litigation or arbitration. And then restructuring, you have seats like restructuring or insolvency. That's all a commercial law firm is. It's basically groups of lawyers who specialize in different areas of law. Those groups, we call them practice areas. So a law firm is just made up of lawyers sitting in different groups, different practice areas, who advise businesses with their business needs. Now we get to the fun part. I'm going to show you what the market for law firms looks like in terms of their practice areas, so the work that they do. And the reason I talk about structuring this in terms of the work they do is that is the main purpose of a law firm, right? We talked about they make money by delivering legal advice to different businesses. So imagine at the top, you have a huge row of the practice areas of a law firm. And these vary. So you have mergers and acquisitions, intellectual property, litigation, competition. And you can map out the firms that are really good in that area of work. So in M&A, for example, you have firms like Latham, Wachtell Lipton in the US, Kirkland, Simpson Thacher, Skadden Paul Weiss, Gibson Dunn, and Davis Polk. And then you can do that across all the practice areas. So finance can be broken down into general banking, equity capital markets, debt capital markets, and then each of those you can also map out firms that are good in those areas. Firms like Weiss and Case, A&O Shearman, Ashurst. Or intellectual property, you can add firms like Bristow's, Bird & Bird, Taylor Bessing, and Baker McKenzie. Now, that's a lot. Don't worry if you're new to the names of those firms. I have this full breakdown over on our training platform, TCLA Premium. But really what I want to encourage you to do is start seeing the legal market in this way based on the work that they actually do. Here are more helpful ways to consider the market for law firm. One is revenue, which is just understanding the scale of some of these firms out there. Firms like Kirkland and Latham, look at the amount of money they bring in. It's also useful to look at profitability. What that means is you have some firms that are smaller in revenue, they're making less money, but they're really, really profitable. The other distinction is global operations. What I mean by that is it really does make a difference to know where a law firm came from. Is it headquartered in the US versus the UK? And does it still operate that way? Or is it more of a global law firm? On the largest US side, you have firms like Kirkland, Latham, White & Case, Ropes & Gray, and Sidley Austin. And what these firms did not that long ago is they came to London and they paid a lot. So they attracted star lawyers from UK firms. And now they're just a mainstay in the London legal market. They attract a lot of students that join the firm. They originate a lot of UK-based work. And what they have that UK firms have long struggled with is an established presence in the US, the largest legal market in the world. Now, on the UK, you have what we call the magic and the silver circle. They were generally named that by the media. They were seen as outperforming the rest of the UK firms in terms of profitability and how much money they make. So there you have firms like Freshfields, Linklaters, Clifford Chance, Slaughter and May, and A&O Shearman. On the silver circle side, you have Ashurst, HSF Kramer, BCLP, McFarland's, and Travers Smith. Now, it's maybe unsurprising that many of those firms in the last few years have announced mergers with law firms in the US in order to compete on that global stage. The third category I want to add here is global law firms. It's a bit of a weird distinction, right? Like every firm is trying to be global quite often, but I'd say personally their branding feels a bit less US or UK originated. So these are firms like CMS, Dentons, DLA Piper, Norton Rose, and Baker McKenzie. They've really expanded globally over time. The final distinction I'd add is the breadth of a law firm. So some law firms are really specially focused on a small number of areas of law. Good example is Bristow's, which has a really big focus on intellectual property, or Quinn Emanuel, which has a big disputes focus. Then completely on the other side of that, you have law firms that are what we call full service. The idea is that we're going to be really good in many practice areas. So if a law firm comes to us with many issues, we can attract a lot of work because we're good at many different things. A good example is the Magic Circle law firms, so firms like Freshfields and Clifford Chance, or the global law firms like Baker McKenzie and CMS. And then you have law firms in the middle. They're kind of good at a fair number of practice areas, but not as full service. Good examples of this include firms like Kirkland Ellis or McFarland's. We've talked about the clients and the law firms. Let's talk about the people. And it helps to understand this traditional pyramid structure of a law firm. So the point here is a business goes to lawyers, That's how lawyers make their money. And we said a law firm is just a group of lawyers banded together. It therefore follows that the success of a law firm depends on its ability to attract and keep really good people. They'll then build really good relationships with businesses who will want to stick with that law firm. Now, in this pyramid, at the bottom, imagine you have many trainee solicitors. Those aren't lawyers yet, as in the name, they're in training, but think of them as doing the lowest rung of work within a law firm, like reviewing lots of documents, managing the parties in a deal, or liaising with lawyers across different countries. Usually in the UK, they spend 2 years in what we call a training contracts, rotating for 6 months across 4 different practice areas. They then choose one they want to qualify into. So if that practice area has the space to bring in a lawyer and they think the person is good, that person then becomes an associate. Associates then make up the next rung of this pyramid. These are the ones on the really high salaries you've seen from law firms, paying upwards of £150,000. And every year, these lawyers move from being newly qualified up a progression ladder from 1 PQE to 2 PQE and onwards. Eventually, right at the top, you have the partners. If a law firm decides you're good enough, you can make equity partner. And that means you get to participate in the profits of a law firm. You can think of the equity partners, it's a very small number within a law firm compared to the rest of the lawyers. And they're responsible for the highest level of work. That's dealing with the clients directly, managing the strategy, managing the overall team as well. Over time, law firms have somewhat blurred those boundaries. For example, more law firms have introduced what we call salaried partners. That's like, I want to give you the title of the partner, but I'm not ready to share in the profits yet. You've also seen some roles like of counsel, which is a bit less like business development, but you're kind of higher than a senior associate or on the same level. What this model does is it helps to retain staff. If I know that my salary is going to go up every year, I'm more likely to stay in the law firm. Eventually, my hope is I'll become partner one day. What's really important to understand this business model is the idea of leverage. The model works by partners billing out the time of junior lawyers at rates higher than what they would cost. So imagine a partner is supervising 5 associates and 2 trainees on a deal. Each is being billed at rates above their cost. The fact that junior lawyers multiply the revenue a single partner can produce themselves is the business model of a law firm. Now, I know that was a lot of detail. Really, my goal with this channel is to take it step by step and will help you understand the world of commercial law. And if you want that visual of how the law firm map all pieces together based on the work they do, I'll add a link below. It's completely free.